Hello, Repliters, and welcome to another edition of Replit 101, where it's been an absolute hot minute since I talked to you last. In fact, I think we've been about a month again, which is getting to be a bit of a habit now, isn't it? But hopefully you've watched some other live streams recently, especially old Coder New Tricks, where I get taught some new stuff. We've done some brilliant stuff lately. And last, I was being taught about data science. If you've not seen those, please do tune in. I'm just going to say hello to everyone in the live chat because, again, it's been a while since I've seen you guys. And nice to thank you for turning up. And hopefully we've got some great questions to answer. But as you know, the first thing that I normally do in Replit 101 is do a quick recap of what's new in Replit since the last time I've seen you. And there's been a lot. In fact, if you caught our developer day yesterday, you'll know that we talked about a lot of stuff. In fact, I was doing some of the manning of the chat at that developer day yesterday, and it was lovely to see some of you guys in the live chat for that, and also to see how 100% convinced you were that it would be me, my little face popping up to talk about it. Well, we pulled out the big guns yesterday, but you got me again today. So let's have a look at what's new in Replit. Let me just flip over to my picture. So the first thing is that for anybody that is on a paid for plan, we now have fewer REPL restarts. And this is really, really cool because you probably remember, or if you are on the free plan, you probably see this again and again. And it's this little box down in the bottom right, which we'll get in a second, which says connected. And the major thing about that is that what that means is that a REPL is basically a virtual machine in the cloud, and it's been spun up, and connected means that it's spun up and it's connected to it. Now, the way we used to run it is that about every hour, we'd have to disconnect you to connect you to a different VM on a different server somewhere because it would rotate them around. Now, if you're paying for a Hacker or Hacker Pro plan, or you're on the Teams, then you are getting a specific VM just for you, which means you can code for longer without a disconnect happening. And roughly a 10x improvement in coding time, which is pretty cool if you're doing any of those things. And I'll be honest, I found this really, really great. When I'm in the flow and I'm really going for it, I'm not getting distracted by random disconnects causing problems anymore. So if you're on Hacker or Hacker Pro or on the Teams, you should find your coding experience is interrupted a lot less by random restarts. But of course, the big thing I think is important to talk about is deployments, because deployments is something that we've released recently. I think it's about 2 weeks ago, actually, and it's the first stage of deployments. Now, many people have asked me in Replit 101 and over the last couple of months, what's the point of deployments? Why do I need it? Why is it different to always on? And there's one big thing. If you are turning your product into something that you want to give to customers or that you want to monetize in any way, deployments are for you. Because what deployments do is they essentially make a copy of your entire project as it is and serve that up to any visitor to your site. That means that you can work and change the code on your REPL to your heart's content, but your customer or your user won't see any of those changes unless you specifically push them. I'll give you a quick idea of how this works. Let's use Ghostwriter to build me something nice and simple at the moment. Let's just create a Flask app on 0.0 type today. Seems to have forgotten how. That shows a random Pokemon image. Let's see if I can do this. I'd be quite pleased if I could do this off a simple short prompt like that. Let's have a go. Let's see if it runs. And something's happening. I'm getting a broken image, but essentially I am getting something. So I'm getting something loading there. I'm not sure how Poker API works, but there we go. The interesting thing about this is that what this is when I click run, it's hosting it straight away on repl.co, which is great for prototyping. But in the past, that's been the only way to give your site to someone. So those restarts that are happening every hour were a problem. Always on kept that to a minimum, kept it to about every day, but it was still happening. And actually, Replit deployments is a way of avoiding that. So let's deploy my slightly broken site, because we could go to this website address, everyone could, but the problem is, as I change it, as I debug it, that page is going to change. And you probably don't want that for code that you're pushing out. I'm going to say very quickly hello to Ilya at the moment. Ilya sent me the most amazing email, I have to say, and I am trying to sort something out for you, Ilya, but I'll give you some details when I reply to it tomorrow, hopefully. But with this as the subject line, hey Baldy, it certainly got my attention, put it that way. So hello, Ilya, nice to see you. So with deployments, you'll know that where we used to have the publish button, we've got release now. We can still publish it like normal to the community if you want, but we've also got deploy now. What deploy allows us to do is to pick a hosting package, and there's loads there. So I know people have been saying, oh, it's like it's spending money to show. Well, you're spending money, and what you're actually getting is your own VM to push it out. And if you've got a simple project like this, you can knock it right down to shared hosting, 20 cycles a day. What's that, like 20 cents a day? It's very good for what it is. And we also have coming soon, announced yesterday, I can't remember the exact term for it, but it'll be usage-based deployments. So you'll only be paying for when it's actually accessed, which is quite cool as well. But I'll put it down to the cheapest one at the moment. But you can see there we go all the way up to a 4 CPU, 16 gig RAM if you're building something that's really complicated. We're going to purchase and deploy. Then it'll take me just to some options here. I can turn auto refill on to always keep paying if I want. And if I click deploy, then I'm taken to the next menu. I can give it a replit.app address if I'm just testing it at the moment. So I could type in a different thing. I'm going to leave that as it is at the moment. We can have a specific build command if it's a bit more complicated than what you've got. You can change the run command. We can add extra environment variables if we want to, things like your OpenAI API keys, stuff like that you want to have on the server. And then you've got two different options, whether it's a web server, like it'll have a web interface, or whether you're building a background worker, something like a Discord or a Slack bot. And that's really useful having those two options differentiated because it gives different setup options as they go. So if I click deploy here, and we're probably not going to see it happening in the next few seconds because this takes a while, because what's actually doing is it's going out to Google Cloud, spinning up its own virtual machine, it's building all the hosting around it, and it will deploy to a separate server. I'll leave that ticking over in the background. But whilst it's going, there's a bunch of other stuff we can do. We can set it up with its own URL and domain. We can go and mess around with some settings. We can do a load of things. But when this is finished deploying, and it takes about 3 minutes for a deployment, what you'll find is you've got a replit.app address, which is your deployment. And you can start editing this code all you want. That replit.app deployment is not going to change from what you pushed out. And that's the big important thing. Whatever you push out is what's always going to be there for your users. And you can work on this and edit it and improve it to your heart's content without damaging that experience for your users. I worked in a school once where I was doing web development and building stuff for the school. And I remember vividly getting a phone call one evening from a teacher, irate and annoyed at me because the website was changing as he was trying to use it. And I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't really think about having a deployed version. And this is the way that a lot of professional programmers work. We have a development server and a production server. This deployment lets you realize that for a very, very small cost. So well worth a look if you're deploying anything, especially things like Discord bots and Slack bots, because it gives you the reassurance that your code isn't breaking as you're messing around with it to improve it. But it also gives you that reassurance that it's not going to be restarting all the time because these VMs are more robust and able to stay up for a longer period of time. I love the fact that people are defending me, by the way, in the comments. I ain't even that bald. Hey, DS, I know what I am. We won't worry about it. And even Ethan saying, well, Ethan, you've messaged me some great stuff on Ask before, just random questions. But maybe not every single message to start with, hey, Baldy. That would be really nice if not every single message started that way. I think Ilya just really got my attention because I wasn't expecting an email with that subject line. But there's our deployments, which is a great feature. And it really just adds to that level of professional work you can do with it. Replit had this reputation a couple of years ago of being for learning and just for learning. And Replit is a great place to learn. But now it's a really great place to deploy your app and make money, which is really, really cool. Since I last talked to you as well, we've also got some new stuff in bounties. Apart from the overall cost, the overall amount of money you can possibly make already being advertised there, we've also got services. Now, services are great, and I think this is still invite only at the moment. But what you can do is you can say, all right, I'll do these kind of things. You can wrap it all up and you can post it as an advert. So instead of having to apply to bounties, people looking to get things made will see your services and just pay you the flat fee. And that's a nice way of working with that slightly different way there. And I believe Bounties Chat has also been launched. I hope, anyway. But it might just be to explorers. Well, thank you very much, everyone. These comments about my hair are going to be happening all day. Next time we do a Replit one-on-one, guys, I'm just going to wear a ridiculous wig and I'm not going to reference it at all. I'm just going to keep going straight away from nothing. Oh, interesting question here from Spec Labs. In the future, would you consider doing a course on using blank REPLs? Well, I'd be very interested to know what you want to get out of that. I do use blank REPLs a lot when I'm setting things up, specifically if I'm setting up environments that don't already exist as templates or things I really want to customize. I don't use them very often though, because it is when I'm doing one of those, I'm setting up a project, I want everything there. But yeah, if you've got ideas, Spec Labs, if you've got ideas in the chat, let me know. I'm always interested in what you guys want to see for courses and for videos and for learn content. That's my favorite thing to do, is to learn content and explain things and try and get people doing new stuff. So yeah, if you got ideas on that, I'd love to do a series on using blank REPLs and customizing them entirely from scratch, because you do get to really dig into those Nix files then if you want. Right, okay, Ethan's also threatening. I can see Ethan sending me every message on Ask now, starting Hey Baldy. So, oh dear me. Spec Lab says trying to set up a Vue 3 Quasar project and really anything. Okay. I'm with you on using it to replace VS Code. What you'll probably find is that the vast majority of it is about editing those Nix files and making sure they're working to start with. And then once all that's working, you can start interacting with it. And of course, if you use the Nix files, you bring the Nix packages, that doesn't count towards your storage usage either. So you can bring in Nix packages of programming languages and dependencies and things like that without the REPL storage going up. And although we do have or will have coming soon, as announced yesterday, the ability to increase the storage size, it's best if you don't have to, isn't it? So Nix packages are great for that. I've got a video, which I did a couple of months ago with Ryan, who's one of our engineers who is a big fan of Nix, on our YouTube channel. So if you head over there and look for Nix, you'll see a video of me and Ryan chatting there about it, showing some examples about how to set those up. So Spec Labs, if you want an idea about how to get started with that, how to spin something up, I give an example where I've managed to get WordPress running in a REPL. He gives some really cool examples and looking at the really complexity you can do with things like Python templates and stuff like that. Yes. DS asks, would 100 days of JS is something we can do? I think we get this question very, very regularly. I would love to do 100 days of JS. That would be a brilliant project for me. But 100 days of code took us about 3 months of constant work to get that out. And it wasn't just me. It was a team of people getting all that stuff together. I wasn't just sat there all day recording, editing, writing. It was a big project. So we'd love to do 100 days of JavaScript. But if you want it, get writing in and asking. If you go to our Ask forum and you put it in as a feature request, we'd love 100 days of JavaScript from David. I'm sure eventually, if enough people ask for it, I'll be able to just go, yes, I'll have that 3 months and dedicated to it. I mean, at the moment, we're very focused on looking at our power features and extending to the point, as said in the keynote yesterday, extending to a point where while you guys are learning on the platform and whilst you're getting your skills in place, you can then just start earning and building full products on the platform without having to go to VS Code and deploying your own stuff. Ethan's saying it's already been requested. The louder the voices, the better, though. The more people that ask for it, the more likely I am to be able to devote that time, because it is just that time commitment. It's a solid 3 months of time to build a course like that. Very, very worthwhile and a lot of fun. But you can imagine 100 days worth of different stuff is a big undertaking. Great. Well, thank you very much. I hope I've addressed everything that was asked initially, but we've got some cracking questions to get started with that were already in the chat. So we're going to start with Maria, who is often asleep, but when we're doing these live streams, but often leaves us questions. So we'll start with this one because this ties into the first Ask Forum question that I want to look at today. Maria asks, can you explain how session keys are processed when not using the Replit secret feature? For example, if I'm building a website using PyCharm and the website user is accessing via browser from afar. Okay, so that's like how do secrets work when you're not using the Replit secret feature, isn't it? So, I mean, let's just remind ourselves what that is. Let's create a REPL. And I always do a Python one. Excuse me, guys. I have a bit of water. My throat's a bit dry tonight. And yes, you might notice that the water bottle does match the nails tonight. It is definitely not one influence the other. But we are looking at an environment file, an environment variable. What secrets is really is just a nice GUI on top of things that are built into the operating system. And your .env files are what you're looking at. So when we build a secret here, system environment variables, what we're actually doing is adding things to an env file. And that's what you do outside of this as well. Now, what I'd probably suggest you do is if you want to build something and you're in Replit anyway, is use this and use deployments, because then you can push them out in the same way and it's much, much easier. But if you are interested in finding out how to do that in an offline way, in a sort of a standalone way, and save things, save secrets and passwords and stuff like that, environment variables and .env files are what you're looking at. I'm just going to start with these questions here. But I wanted to bring that in because I wanted to look at this question from Ask. And again, hello to Ethan, who's an admin in our Ask Forum and they're doing a great job. But the Ask Forum is brilliant. If you've got a question, go there because you'll get an answer much quicker than coming to 100 days of code. Coming to Replit 101. Do ask your questions, but if you want to answer quick, go there. We've got loads of great people in there. In fact, I think, Ethan, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we've got a great TL4 unveiling soon, haven't we? Or something like that. We've got more people getting up to TL4. So it's an exciting time for the Ask Forum. But it's a great place to go to ask questions. It's also the same place we've got all our tech support and stuff like that in there now. So it's a really great atmosphere and a really great place to go to talk and ask questions. So most of the time, these are already answered. And in fact, this one is answered, but I want to bring it up because it's a common misconception. Lots of people didn't really use secrets. Honestly, people didn't really use secrets. They just hard code their API keys and things in the code because they didn't really realize it was a thing until OpenAI API keys became very sought after and used in a lot of projects. And in fact, a lot of our templates require you to immediately add an OpenAI API key as a secret. It's because it's a really good way of doing it and it stops that API key being used by somebody else, which of course is really what you want. OpenAI API keys are normally tied to your credit card. So if they leak, you can run up a very large bill very, very quickly. The issue we have is when we have more than one person trying to work on a piece of code. Now, traditionally, if you're doing that via GitHub or something, sharing secrets has been a bit of a faff. And please, in the chat, do let me know if you've done this yourself, if you shared secrets with something on GitHub and you've realized how much of a pain it's been. I've always struggled with secrets on GitHub. When you've got those .env files and you're trying to pass them about, you don't want them to be committed to the Git history. You don't want them to be in the repository because you don't want other people just being able to look at them as plain text and getting those secrets. Where Replit comes into its own, though, is with our multiplayer feature. So if you're doing development work with somebody else and using the multiplayer feature, any secrets you've put in, they can use. So if I'm multiplayering to a REPL that you've sent me, I can look and edit your secrets and use your secrets just as if I was in there in the first place. And it makes things so much easier. It's an unbelievable difference in how easy it is then to collaborate on a piece of work. And I know I've been doing some collaboration with people on AI projects recently and looking at things and getting some opinions, but I never have to fuss around. All I need to do is send in a multiplayer invite link and it goes well. So secrets then are such an integral part to the way multiplayer works. It's great. The only thing you have to remember is if you fork a REPL, it doesn't fork the secrets as well, which is probably a good thing because if your REPL's public, anybody can fork it and you wouldn't want them seeing your secrets as a result. But it does mean if you are taking a template with an OpenAI API key and you fork it, you have to go and re-add that again. In fact, the video I released last week for Bounty Bootcamp, Bounty Hunters on Slack integration, I have to do that mid-video because I move code from one REPL to another and lose all my API keys. Okay, moving on then. Now, Jitendra has said that sometimes print statement after if doesn't work properly in Replit. Oh, that'd be really interesting because it's not the way, it's not Replit sort of interpreting it. Each language has its own input. He follows up saying, for example, if we try a secure login example on day 6 and it doesn't work, you can recheck. Okay, well, let's load day 6 up and let's see if I can remind myself what that was. It's been a while. You can see we've got some cool new courses, by the way, if you're interested. The Unlock the Power of LLMs like GPT with Python by AI Camp is a really good introduction to AI and how the models work and things like that. We've also got a bunch of cool stuff as well from me as ever, and our Bounties Bootcamp stuff is there now as well. But it's 100 days of code I was looking for. Let's go into that, and we'll go and take a look at day 6 that we can have a look at the question that Jitendra's asking us about. If I can click a button, which apparently I can't. Right, all the way back to day 6. I hope you're happy. This is definitely affecting my RSI. Right, okay, so this is an if and an elif question then. And let's have a look at what we've been asked to do. Sorry, guys, I've got to stop speaking into my bottle while I'm doing it. It must be echoey. There we go. And that'll make a horrible scraping noise. I put it on the desk. Live streaming for years. Still haven't got the basic etiquette done, have I? Right. So this is the secure login option. Okay. I don't know why I highlighted the code. There's a big copy button. Let's copy that and let's get it straight in there. Okay, so I run that here. And the username should be Mark. Welcome, Mark. Anything else, it should say go away. So if I put John, go away. Okay. If I put, let's just slap an emoji in there. If I can get my emoji picker to come up, which appears on one of my many screens. Let's put my favorite emoji in. There we go. Go away. Good. So the only time I can see that this wouldn't work, Jitendra, is if you were to put Mark in any other way than it is here. So here, of course, Mark is in lowercase. So that works. If you do it in uppercase, it's not going to work. But as far as I can see, the print statement seems to work here. Oh, sorry, Jitendra's giving me something, and I think I know the exact answer to your question now. Please try the password example. Now, actually, I was trying to help somebody out on Twitter with this earlier. I'll just have a look, see who it was. Because this is a really common thing, and this is because of the way that I tried to set this up. When we did it, so I can't find any of my interactions now very helpfully. I get a lot of notifications, as you can imagine. Who was I helping? Who was I helping? I cannot find them. I'll stop just looking at my tweets now because it's not a very good example, is it? So the password example that you're talking about there uses a specific way of taking in passwords. Now, in my shell, and my console on the right-hand side, if I ever get prompted to log into anything, it asks my username, and I can see the text of that, and it'll ask for my password. Now, in a GUI in other systems, as I type each character of my password, I'd get a dot or an asterisk or something like that to illustrate each character I've pressed. In a Linux terminal, when you're asked for a password, it's invisible what you type in. It's still working, but it is invisible. So what is actually happening, Jitendra, is that it is working. You just can't see what's going in. So if I copy this one, I thought I would have done that a little bit differently to that, but there we go. We'll take that one in. Let's pop that one in and run it. In this case, mark password. Oh, I didn't bother with the password code there. So yeah, that seems to work all right. And then I run it again, and I do Suzanne. Nope. No password there. In fact, it doesn't matter what password that Suzanne puts in. It just says hello to her all the time because I haven't got an and in there. I don't see a reason, Chandra, that it wouldn't work in this example. If you've got an example REPL that you can send me a link to, I'll pop my username up on there. So my username is David at Replit. So you can do a multiplayer invite for me to have a look at the code that's not working. Or you can send me an invite to david.morgan@replit.com. If you could send me that, I'll certainly take a look at it, and we'll have a look at it on the live stream if we get to it. But the only reason that you wouldn't have that is if you were using the actual password input. And I'm not sure if it's in this tutorial, but I know where it is. So if I just get my toolbar back, so I can actually press the back button. And if I can find that, Learning Hub, there we go. Now, one of the days you make a rock, paper, scissors game. And what I've done is I've misused that password function so that it overrides it. I think it's probably about day 14, I would imagine. It is day 14. Genius. Now, what I've done with the code here is I've overridden a function. What does that mean? Well, that means that I've said, hey, Python, you know you do input, and you know when input works, you take text in, yeah? Well, instead of doing that, do this instead. Overriding the function is a really, really good way of getting started, and it's what these two lines do here. And I hope I've explained it here. But what that does is it imports a function called getPass, which is a function to get a password, and it gets the password without anything working. So now, whatever you input, I'll just print it out afterwards, show you it works. Whatever I input here, I'll bring my console up a bit higher. Whatever I'm typing in, nothing is appearing. And so to a lot of people, they think that this is broken, it's not working, and they give up on it. But if I just press enter, well, I didn't quite spell there properly, but you can see that everything I typed did get saved in the normal way. It's just being utilized in a way that the password system works. And the password system in a Linux terminal doesn't show you any characters for safety reasons. So it is working. It just looks like it isn't in that case. So Jitendra, if that's not the question you're asking, please do send me an email. Please do invite me to your REPL, and I'll take a proper look, maybe later in the stream or maybe at a different time. Let's get back to our questions, though, because Maria didn't just have one about how session keys are processed. Don't forget, Maria, that's a .env file. You can Google that and have a look at it yourself. But the second question is about, and she said gas style sheet, but she later clarified that she meant CSS. The CSS style sheet on day 78. It doesn't run from the same location as the HTML file. Now, this is likely me doing this. So let's go and have a look at day 78 and see what we can find out. And at least there'll be less scrolling to day 78 this time. Here we go. Got to put some better thumbnails on these videos, honestly. See my little face every time I go on this page. 78, here we go. 628 people have completed day 78. It is fascinating, by the way, how many people have actually completed the course versus how many people have started it. Lots of people start with great intentions but don't quite get there. So if you have got to the end of the 100 days, you've got to like the last sort of few, you've done really well. Right, okay, so have I got all the code in one place? Let's have a look. Let's grab that there. I'll jump to the end where I've got a video solution and I've got a REPL for the solution. So we'll just go there. And hopefully I've got an editing workspace button. There we go. I didn't realize it's just my own solution for this, but we can at least have a look at how it works and work our way through it here. As we wait for my internet connection to actually work with it tonight. Oh, dear me. The reason, by the way, that I'm struggling a bit tonight is because very nicely for the live stream yesterday, we turned on the 1080p streaming option on the software we use, which is nice because normally I have to come to you in disappointing 720p, which is not the most useful thing for displaying code. So hopefully you're getting better quality today, and hopefully it's making a bit more sense about what's going on. Okay, so the question is, why is the CSS somewhere else? Well, let's have a look. What have I done? Well, I think it's... let's have a look. I'm just touching to myself. So let's have a look at the files, and let's have a look at templates. So we've got our reflection file here. And we've got a link. Let's have a look at the hidden files, see if there's anything else. It doesn't seem to be. I mean, the file should have an if statement that alters the reflection. There we go. And it alters that based on the page number. So it loads a different thing. The CSS style then should be code elsewhere. So I'm sorry, Maria, I'm not really sure what the question is with day 78 here. I can give you a generic answer, which is that the reason that there would be a different place for the CSS file to be in as opposed to the HTML files or the templates is just because you define it that way. And the classic place to put templates is in the templates folder, and the classic place to put CSS is in the static folder. Now, the reason for that is because the way Flask works is all this folder structure, if this was a very simple HTTP server, all of these folders, all these files will be visible to our user. You just got to type in the names of these files and you'll be able to see the code. Now, clearly that's a bad way for a website to work because the website needs to be secure. So what Flask does is it says, oh, no, we're not showing you anything unless you specifically tell us where to look. So one of the things you say in code is you say, okay, I want a static folder. And in that static folder, I'm going to put things. That's where I might put my images, where I might put my CSS. And because of that, then the templates folder is a little bit different. Please have a look again. I've got some lessons where I cover CSS, and I can't remember the exact date of those now. But when we're talking about the static folders, that's the key bit of the lesson there. The static folder is where we say, and you say actually in code, go here for any files you need. And because of the way CSS works, is the web page loads and then it goes, right, I need to go and get that CSS file. So it needs to be in a static folder for it to be accessible. Templates are a bit different because templates are interpreted by the Flask server itself. So templates don't need to be specifically put in the same place as static. In fact, it would be a bit weird if you did, because people would be able to type /template.html and they'd be able to see the code for your template. So that would be strange, wouldn't it? What's Jason saying here? Let's have a look. Jason said it's amazing. Could you imagine Microsoft trying to do something like this? Enterprise. yeah. If this was a VS Code live stream, yeah, you'd be paying a significant amount of money for that, wouldn't you? Jason, come back though, please. We do these. Well, it'll probably be once a month from now on because that's the sort of cadence that I've got the time for at the moment. I'd love to do more though. So if you've got more interest in doing more Replit 101. In fact, we did a survey a couple of months ago on what you wanted from it, and honestly, I sort of felt like a lot of the community just enjoy getting together and nerding out about code and asking just random questions. Maybe instead of just Replit 101, we can have just a Replit hangout where we have a live stream like this and you bring questions and we have people popping up and chatting about things or what's on their mind or what they're interested in. So we might add another live stream to the mix. It's just a bit more chill and a bit more chatty, where you can come and bring your questions more generally. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about AI. A lot of you are thinking about how you can use it in different projects. And I've got some cool stuff I've done that I'd love to show you that's not really suitable for like a full video, but they're just really little neat things. By the way, if you've seen my video on Auto GPT, please, if you haven't seen it, go and have a look at it. It's mainly me just going, what's Auto GPT and what's it for? But it's a really cool technology. Although I have lost 2 days trying to get to one particular thing because it's getting distracted a lot. But it is a really cool technology, absolute cutting edge. And if you haven't got an OpenAI API key that you can play that yourself, the video gives you a good flavor of what it is and what it works with. So, answering all those questions, I think we're pretty much done with the questions from the live viewers. Although Hydrin has asked me something which I've got to assume is Haskell, because that's the only place I've ever seen and Debunked mentioned before. So that's got to be Haskell. Hydrin, if you're still there, let me know. Is that a Haskell question? Because I'm tempted to just ask Ghostwriter Chat this, because I'll be honest, I think I know what a monoid is, but I'm not 100% sure that I'm au fait with where we are with Haskell. It's been a long time since I did Haskell coding, I can tell you that. I think it's the best part of 20 years since I did any serious Haskell coding. Let's say, I'm going to start with in Haskell just to give it some context. What is a monoid in the category of endofunctor? Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I don't know why I always get surprised at this stuff. I've been dealing with AI stuff for a while now, but Ghostwriter Chat always still blows me away at how quick it comes back with an answer. So let's have a look. It's the so it's where it's mapped to itself, is it? Or it's mapped to something that's specifically associated with it? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. We've got a nice technical answer there, to be honest, haven't we? So, Hydrogen, what I'd say to you is, I do not know what it is, but Ghostwriter Chat does appear to, and I'm sure if you want to Google it, you'll find out as well. But Hydrogen, if you're there in the chat, do let me know. Was that Haskell? Because that's the only place I've heard those phrases before. Oh, Ethan's asked a really interesting question that I've started from before. How do you make a Replit? Well, if you watched yesterday's live stream, you'll know that we do actually make Replit on Replit now, which is really cool. And it is a thing called bootstrapping, which is what they do with like new compilers and new programming languages. It's where you build something using the current technology stack, and then you build something to turn stuff into that, and then you build an ability to make this new technology stack on the new technology stack. And that's bootstrapping. And then from that point on, everything is just in native code you're running. And I first learned about this concept when we were talking about like language design and compiler design back in the old days. And in many ways, like a language like Python hasn't really done that, because Python, a lot of the libraries and a lot of the runtime is still written in raw C, which is great and all and very, very fast and effective, but it's not quite the bootstrapping ideology. Anyway, back to us at Replit. So we do make Replit on Replit. But I mean, it's just such a big thing. If you want to start building something similar, the best place to start is with code execution. Is, can you make a text box on a web page that when you click run executes the code and puts the output in a different part of the screen? You can do this with JS as an example language quite easily, and you can get it to interpret there. In fact, I believe when we were working on that prototype Replit app a few weeks ago, actually that was about a month ago now. Maybe you've seen those videos that our CEO Amjad tweeted out, which is where it's people that work for Replit talking into an app and saying, "Build me an app that does something," and then we get back an app instantly. It's a brilliant prototype. Well, we should see the functionality coming through to the main app at some point in the next few months, but unbelievably cool. One of the things we did there actually was asked it to make something that could evaluate JavaScript code, and it pretty much made that. Text box does that. But then, of course, you start adding the technologies on top. You want to have not just one text box, but you want to have a rich text editor that does code highlighting. You're bringing in your dependencies there. And you build and you build and you build, and that's the honest answer. I mean, there's so much to Replit. If you want a side project you can make some money from, there are a million different ideas that use AI in some way at the moment. And of course, Ethan, if you do want to jump into something, bounties is the place to go to make a few cycles. But I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, let's get back to Ask then, because for the first time in months, we might actually get to a second question on Ask tonight. Here's more of a philosophical question that I wanted to deal with tonight. And there's been some interesting debate going on with this. A few people have asked me this sort of question. And the question is basically this. It's like, are online course certificates worthwhile when most online courses you can just speed? And it's a good question, isn't it? Because if you were to buy a course on Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, they don't do any testing as they would in a formal education establishment. They don't check that you know what you're doing. In fact, all they really do is check that you've watched the video. And in some cases, that's it. So you could launch the video and click next, and very, very quickly, in fact, you could even build a bot to do it for you, couldn't you? Very, very quickly, you could gain an accreditation. Now, the main thing is that if you did that just to get a certificate, then it's probably likely that you wouldn't be much good in the job that you're applying for, because maybe you don't have the level of knowledge because you were just doing it to get a certificate, or because you're looking for the way out. And that is a difficult one. I can see, if you have been a JavaScript developer for 20 years, but you haven't got any formal qualifications, yeah, it's great, isn't it? It shows you've done it. If you are learning to program, and if you're learning to code and you want something to say, I have done this, and it's something to talk about because you've got no formal qualifications, yes, it's good. But I wouldn't obsess about it. I say this reasonably confidently, most companies want someone who's able to problem solve and would need to learn a new technology stack anyway to work at the company if you're looking for a job in that area. So the most important thing is, I would say, to have a portfolio of projects that you can demonstrate, whether you want a certificate or not. Certificates are great as a way of just very quickly being able to go, we've got one. And in fact, we've sold one for 100 days of code for completion, and I think 50 days as well. I think we did both of those. I'm sure we did. So that's possible if you want to get that. But mainly, it's just I've done it type of badge. It's more of a badge of honor than anything else. They are a nice way of showing what you've achieved and what you've accomplished, but they are the starting point in a conversation with employers and recruiters, I would say. Ironclad jumps in here. I think this is great. Ironclad, who works on our support team, he says he's not a great fan of it, as the courses can be speedrun, but it's something to put in your resume. And he's saying the same as me. Sometimes list a bunch of projects you put into prod. I'd give that a go, because it is a real big different thing. Quirky's saying, what's the pencil icon? I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm sure Ethan will know and be able to tell us. I do have admin privileges in here, so it may be that those posts have been deleted, or the red ones probably have, but it may be that I can go in and edit some permissions or something. That's probably all it is. I wouldn't worry about that. So that, I think, is an interesting conversation, and it's good to think about. And I think that if you are thinking of speed running a course just to get the accreditation, have a harder think about whether you want that or not. Most of these companies actually sell these certificates for quite a significant sum of money. I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but I know that the formally accredited ones were quite a lot. And I think Coursera, only accredits ones that are paid for. So you have to pay for it in the first place to get the certificate. And in those cases, it feels a bit more like, well, I've paid for it. I can get a certificate for it to show that I've done it. But if you don't do it, what's the point in paying for it in the first place? They are a nice thing to get a conversation started with a recruiter. They are not instead of learning to program, and they are not instead of having the skills in the first place. DS says, what about Code Academy? Well, Code Academy is, I think, our CEO and co-founder, Amjad, early developers on that. And great way of learning to code in a number of languages. All of it is worthwhile. All these learning platforms are great. I personally think that we have a great learning platform here on Replit with 100 Days of Code course, but we don't have lots and lots and lots of courses in the same variety that you get elsewhere. All these platforms are a great place to go and learn, but the important thing is, did you learn something from it? And if you did, then when you're asked to do the coding part of the interview, which is where you're asked to solve coding problems or show how you go about solving a problem, it's not necessarily that the recruiter wants you to solve it. In fact, I know in some cases, recruiters will pose questions that aren't solvable or aren't solvable in a meaningful amount of time. But all they're looking for is your processes and how you break that problem down, how you decompose and deconstruct it, what your strategies are, what your testing strategy is. It's looking at the skills that you've developed from learning to program that would be useful for somebody working in software development. So that, in my opinion, and I think in most recruiters' opinion, is more important. The certificate is the foot in the door thing. It is, I have been accredited in something, let's get into it. I feel good about that. It's nice to do something quite fundamentally different to what we normally talk about to Replit 101. If you guys got any opinions, please do put them in the comments, because it'd be nice to have yours as well. Next up in this Ask Forum is a question from PHP, a language very close to my heart. PHP was my major web development love, but it's only really me and Mark Zuckerberg that want to program in it anymore. But PHP is really interesting. PHP has a concept called a session, which is where we say, okay, HTTP is a stateless protocol. And what that means is that if you are sending any information over the internet in HTTP or HTTPS, the protocol itself doesn't remember you. So every time you make a further request to a web page that we might want to know who you are or what you've done, we need to sort of build on top of that. Now, a session is PHP's way of essentially storing some variables on your computer that will allow us to later on identify who you are and record sort of a conversation between us. Oh, excuse me. Dear me. You can tell it's late in the UK, can't you? Because I'm yawning away. It's been a bit of a long day. But it's really interesting is that this user is struggling to store sessions. In PHP, session start needs to be the first command on any PHP page so that we can pull the data in properly. And then, yes, you should be able to access. Again, most people that don't know PHP are probably looking in disgust that all the variable names have a dollar in front of them. This $_ is a reserved name. It's an array, or in this case, more of a dictionary, that we'd store on the user's computer if they have a consistent session. The first bit of code would set the name to Andrew, set the session's name to Andrew, and then move them to the results page. Now, that's what header does. It's like a forwarding command. Interestingly, I don't think exit would be processed in this code ever, because you'd go off of there. And in results.php, we've got this bit here, which should echo at the name. and we're getting this result. Immediately, we've got a user saying, oh, looks like it's working. So let's get that code and let's fork it and let's see what's happening, because PHP is interesting in the way that it works and the way in which it puts things in your browser. So let's run it. There we go. And yes, we are getting that message here. So let's open it in a new tab and see if we get the same thing. Oh, we don't. That's very interesting, isn't it? Because our new tab, completely lost where I was. Our new tab here is showing exactly what we want the code to be, whereas the web view in the REPL isn't. Now, the reason for this is really quite interesting. And I used to force my poor students to do PHP web development. By the way, hello. If I've ever taught you in person, hello, how are you? How's things? Hope life's going well for you. I would force those poor people to learn a bit of PHP in their last 2 years of school to build a web service. And we get to this point in Replit, and this was always a great conversation piece, because why is it working in one place and not the other? What's the difference in the access? I'm sure you in the live chat can work this out for yourself, but there's a massive difference between accessing a website from an embedded browser, as here, or directly accessing the website from your browser. And essentially what's happening is when I access it directly from the browser, session works as normal and it's able to store some information on my computer. Here, session is trying to store information in the server that's loading this, and it's not letting it. So the error we're getting is because it's trying to access it not on our computer, but on the server that's pulling this information in. And so if you're dealing in sessions in PHP, you can't really test them out and debug them in the web view. What you need is to pull open a new tab and open it up in an external window to test, which is a bit old school, absolutely. But PHP itself is very old school, very, very old school. So I think we can forgive it a little bit. Guys, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be back doing Replit 101, and we'll be doing the same thing. I think 10th of May is the next time I've got it in the calendar. So we'll see you then at about 10:30 UK time, which is about 2:30 Pacific time. And unfortunately about 3:30 in the morning for IST. So apologies to our Indian viewers who have to watch async for me doing it in the middle of the night. Probably not the nicest time to do it for you guys. But we did actually, in our last Old Code and New Tricks, we did it at a good time for our Indian viewers. Unfortunately, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning for our American friends. So you can't please everyone all the time when you've got a worldwide audience, but we do try to mix it up so you can see it. Async is always good. Go to our YouTube channel, which is just Replit on YouTube, which I believe is youtube.com/Replit, but you never know. And see all the async stuff we do live, because we get a lot more people watching async than watching live. But for those of you who are live, thank you. I really love Replit 101. It's one of my favorite times of the week is to come and chat to you guys and see the banter in the chat. And I said that very unironically because I'm British and can say the word banter unironically. Anyway, thank you very much. Please bring your questions for next time, which is about the 10th of May. And I will see you soon on more Replit videos. Bye.